when Richard's doing that, I would just like to welcome you all to our Skills Match webinar, which is focusing on board governance. And this week, as you probably are aware, it is Trustee Week. And I know that NICFA are certainly doing an awful lot of events this week in terms of working with the voluntary community sector and giving tips and a steer in terms of how to really increase the capacity of your board. And we're hoping that this webinar will complement that. And we hope that hopefully it'll achieve two aims. And that is that it will give charities and community groups an understanding of what really makes a good board. And then we'll also hear from a number of people in terms of what it means to be a board member and what it means to sit on a board. And it's very much a two-way partnership. And I'm just delighted now that we have our speakers this morning. I'm particularly delighted we have Richard Armstrong from Arthur Cox. He is going to start off this session this morning. And sorry, I should have mentioned this session is actually being recorded. And it will be put up on our YouTube channel, hopefully by tomorrow, so that if you do have to leave early, or if you feel that it's been really helpful and useful, which I'm hoping you will, you can feel free to share it. So our YouTube channel is BITCNI Bell, so that stands for Business in the Community Belfast. And this is all part, I mentioned at the start there, this is all part of our Skills Match programme, where business in the community are working in partnership with NICFA, and we're being funded by the Department for Communities to share the skills and experience of the business sector with the community and voluntary sector. And I know that everybody realises this is now the time when we all need to work together to make sure that our economy and the voluntary and community sector are supported during this time, because we all rely on them so much. So I am not going to talk for too long because I'm conscious we do only have an hour. So Richard Armstrong, I'm delighted he's here from Arthur Cox. Sorry, I've said that twice, Richard.
Yeah.
And then Richard is going to hand over to Laura Horrigan from First Source. And then Laura is going to hand over to Ian Henry from the Henry Brothers. And then we will hear from Alwyn Liner, who is the Chief Executive of NIACRO. And hopefully we may have some time for Q&A at the end, but as you can appreciate, time is of the essence. So if you do have any questions, do feel free to pop them in the panel. And also as well, if you've been inspired by what you hear today and you want more information, please don't hesitate to get in contact with myself or Angela or Sandra from NICFA. So I will be quiet, Richard, and I will hand over to you now. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. All right, can I just check that you can see my screen okay there?
I can indeed, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So thanks very much again, Holly, for having me. As I say, I'm not Maeve, I am Richard Armstrong from Arthur Cox, and I am one of the senior associates in the corporate and commercial team in Arthur Cox. I suppose my day-to-day would be dealing with mergers and acquisitions, private equity investment, and of course then corporate governance matters, whereby we would help companies with their sort of formal board and shareholder approvals, maybe interpreting and updating their articles of association or company constitution. And then also from time to time, I would sit in on their quarterly board meetings, just to ensure that their governance measures are being observed correctly and the meeting has been validly convened and all that sort of good stuff. So today, hopefully sort of drawing on that experience, I'll be able to give you a few top tips that will help you in running an effective board. And some of these will be sort of more legal tips, and also then sort of practical things that maybe I've come across in the past that would have been helpful for a board and promoting the success of a company. So before sort of getting started then, I thought I would just sort of set the tone of my webinar with a quote, just to sort of say the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And equally then a great board should be more than the sum of its individual parts. So that is to say, I suppose a good board will work together cohesively to sort of achieve its strategic goals, rather than sort of a team of individuals who maybe aren't quite coherent in their thinking, which of course won't be conducive to a good board which can promote the success of its company. And hopefully then some of the tips that I will give today will sort of allow you to ensure that your board is more than the sum of its individual parts. So number one then, sort of a more legal tip, is that directors should be familiar with their statutory and constitutional duties and responsibilities. And some of you may be familiar with these sort of statutory directors' duties, and these are set out within the Companies Act 2006. And as you'll see from the slide, directors are required to act within their powers, promote the success of the company, exercise independent judgment, exercise reasonable care, skill and diligence, avoid conflicts of interest, do not accept benefits from third parties, declare an interest in any proposed transactions with the company that director is interested in, and declare any interest in any existing transactions that director might be interested in. So in my view, these statutory duties form the very foundation of good governance and provide a good guide for directors of what it takes to be an effective, diligent and measured director in the eyes of the law. And whilst they are largely common sense based, I just wanted to touch on a few of them before I move on. So section 171 is the duty to act within powers. So essentially that means that a director must act within the powers granted to it under the Articles of Association of that organisation. And I'll come on to the company constitution in a little bit more detail on my next slide, but essentially a company constitution is akin to a contract between the directors, shareholders and the company as to how that company should be operated from a legal perspective. And ultimately that constitution allows all those interested parties to have sort of certainty and clarity over what they can and cannot do. And just to sort of highlight, if a director does not act in accordance with its powers and company constitution, it is a strict liability breach of their statutory duty. And at the sort of severest level, that can lead to disqualification as a director. But I don't want to scare you too much on that. So section 172 is then one that I think is possibly the most fundamental of all of the duties, and that is that a director must promote the success of the company as a whole and act in a manner which is in good faith, and ultimately whatever they do must sort of benefit the benefactors and stakeholders and shareholders of that company, rather than, I suppose, taking decisions which are more beneficial to themselves personally. And the legislation does give us some guidance as to how a director can actually put that into practice in terms of their decision making. So I suppose when a director is trying to make a decision on behalf of the company, they should consider the likely consequences of any decision in the long term. They should consider the interests of the organisation's employees and how they would be impacted. They should consider the impact of the company's operations on the wider community and environment, which would be particularly relevant for a lot of you guys on the call today. And they must ensure fairness is applied across all stakeholders, shareholders and benefactors of the company. So a few things there just to guide you in terms of how do I make decisions which will promote the best interests of the company. So section 173 then is just one further one I want to sort of highlight, and that's to exercise independent judgment. So that is to say a director must ultimately be responsible for the decisions that they make, but that doesn't mean that you have to sort of work in a silo and make a decision without any guidance from anyone else. It would be encouraged to make sure you discuss with external advisors, discuss with your peers, and make sure you have the full picture before you would go ahead and make a decision. So ultimately, a director, in my view, who's familiar with their statutory duties will have a better idea of how to conduct themselves as a director in a more effective way, and it will ensure that good governance will sort of ground them in everything they do for the company. As I said, I would go on to the sort of company constitution. The company constitution, as I've said in the slide, comprises the memorandum and articles of association, and in some cases you'll have a shareholders agreement as well. So this ties back into the duty to act within powers, and it is extremely important that a director is fully familiar with their company constitution, and essentially they know what they can and cannot do and what they have to do when, for example, they're holding a board meeting. So just to give you a bit of an example of what a director should be thinking about before a board meeting and what they will find in the company constitution, it's, I suppose, what notice is required for that meeting, how many people need to be in attendance and what is the quorum for that meeting, how do you bring somebody onto the board legally and how do you remove them from the board legally. And as I say, these are all things that you must be thinking about before a board meeting, and those will be all found in the Articles of Association. And if an act or a decision is taken in contravention of the Articles of Association, it actually calls into question the validity of the decisions at that meeting. So again, it shows you the importance of knowing what is in the company constitution and then making sure that all board meetings are carried out in accordance with it. So just a final point before moving on to the next one, and again, it seems probably quite an obvious one, but there's certain legal subtleties to this, and is who actually owes these duties and responsibilities. And my quote there, I think, sort of teases it out. It's by any person occupying the position of director by whatever name called. So that includes not only your executive and non-executive directors, your chairperson, but also shadow directors who might not necessarily be legally and formally appointed as a director, but who actually influence decisions in the background and sort of put their input in that way. So it's just a flag that anybody who is sitting in the background and influencing the board will also be captured and will have to comply with the company constitution and the statutory duties as well. So I suppose then, just to conclude on that, it is very important that a director is familiar with their legal and constitutional duties, because it will mean that good governance can underpin everything they do and all the decisions they make. And one sort of useful tip then from a practical perspective, which we have had a hand in previously, is to produce a welcome or information pack for any directors, both existing and new coming onto the board, which might summarise the duties of a director once they take up that position. And sort of the overwhelming feedback, particularly from new directors, is that a resource like that can give them more confidence in terms of what is expected from them when they join the board, which in turn then can sort of free up their mind to actually focus on the running of the company rather than being bogged down in what my legal duties are. So it is something to think about, is producing a pack like that when new members are coming onto the board. So tip number 2 then is just to ensure that those on the board are right for your company. Again, it would seem to be a very sort of obvious tip, but it's not necessarily one that is always followed. So I have seen companies not necessarily following a robust recruitment process for a director, which in turn has led to issues down the line whereby the individual wasn't quite what they had expected or wasn't quite the right fit for them. So I suppose just fleshing out what I've said in the slide, directors should be selected on merit, having regard to their experience and skill set, and shouldn't just be the sort of obvious or convenient option. And this includes looking at the diversity of the board, with greater diversity leading to sort of a broader range of views at board meetings, which can then lead to a sort of more diverse range of solutions if there are issues arising. Going on then, the recruitment process should also be rigorous enough that you can gain a sort of a proper sense of the personality of the individual you're bringing onto the board. Are they the right fit for your board, and do they share the passion for your organisation that you do? So again, an obvious one, but not necessarily always at the forefront of a board's mind when they're bringing somebody on. Thirdly then is just to make sure you resist the temptation for a quick fix. Have a long-term view in mind when you make the appointment. And then most importantly, from my view, is that you trust that director will come on and have the right intentions at heart and will promote the success of your company as if it was their own as well. I think that the UK Corporate Governance Code sort of sums it up quite nicely. Always be a formal and rigorous procedure followed before a director is given that position. And just before moving on then, I just wanted to sort of highlight the use of non-executive directors. So these are individuals that I'm sure you're all aware that aren't necessarily involved in the day-to-day running of an organisation, but in most cases they will be a sort of a highly experienced individual with seats on other companies and other organisations of various different business subjects. So I suppose in that way, they can be very useful to fill gaps in experience and knowledge on perhaps even a more youthful board that it wouldn't otherwise have. And it can also then sort of contribute to evaluation of board members in a more independent way. And I suppose, long story short, give a sort of a bigger picture view of things rather than being sort of entrenched in the day-to-day business. They can take a step back and potentially provide more valuable input and information from that sort of independent position. Number 3 then is to document decision making. So again, this is something that we've seen companies sort of neglect over the years and not necessarily appreciate the importance of. But ultimately, I suppose, as I've said in the slide, it is actually a Companies Act requirement that directors keep a record of their proceedings at board meetings, and those minutes should actually be kept safely for a period of 10 years from the date of that meeting. And then moving on then just to sort of a few specific benefits of actually taking those minutes. So first of all, they'll provide evidence that the meeting actually took place, and you'll have a good and accurate description of what actually was discussed and agreed. It's a way of formalizing your action points for each director, which in turn can promote accountability, as that director will have to go away and ensure they fulfill that action for the next meeting. It will allow all board members, including those who aren't able to attend, to stay well informed of what was decided at the meeting. It will also then show that the meetings, as touched upon earlier with the company constitution, that the meetings were held validly in accordance with the constitution. Everybody was there in terms of quorum, the correct notice was provided, and all of that good stuff, just to make sure your meeting is validly held. And ultimately, I suppose it can facilitate continuity at board level. It will mean you can look back at your previous board minute, take account of the action points, and make sure those action points have been progressed and built upon, and you can set the new action points going forward. So as I say, it will promote continuity. So at the very least, I would say it's extremely important to keep your accurate records, because it can keep the company organized, which can only be beneficial for a large organization trying to progress. Number 4 then is just to continually evaluate board performance. So as with anything we do in life, you can only really get better if you can sort of be self-critical and evaluate your performance and see where you can improve. And this is no different in the case of a board of directors. So directors individually should assess their own performance and identify areas of weakness and see if they can improve to ensure everybody on that board is operating to the maximum capacity. And I've listed a few things there just that a board might think about when trying to sort of evaluate performance. So can you think smarter, both individually and collectively? Is there effective communication between board members? And I know that's not even at board meetings, but other than that, and I know that's probably a particular challenge at this moment in time with the pandemic ongoing. But again, it's something to think about. Are directors being accountable for their actions? Are they actually going away and fulfilling the action points that they had agreed at the previous board meeting? And is each director being deployed in the best role for them? Are their particular skill set, is their particular skill set being maximized, and are they in the right sort of role? So again, it's just about ensuring the board can be as good as it can be, and regular evaluation, perhaps even just once a year on a formal basis, can, in my view, help to achieve that. I've also then set out a few sort of basic methods of evaluation that you might consider. So obviously there's the sort of more basic self-evaluation process, whereby an individual director will meet with the chairperson once a year and identify any weaknesses, any areas of improvement, and any action points they might want to take away for the coming year, and they would review it again at the end and see has their improvement been made. And then also there's the sort of more rounded evaluation method, where you could also get feedback from sort of certain stakeholders or benefactors as to their view of board performance. And again, that outside look can never do any harm, because you're taking into account everybody's thoughts, not just your own. And ultimately that sort of process of evaluation can again promote accountability, which is so important in a board meeting, in a board setting, because inevitably an individual or a human being who takes away certain action points and areas of improvement will want to show that they have improved on those areas in the given year, and show to the rest of the board that they are continuing to grow and succeed as a contributor to that particular board. Okay, so number 5 then is defining the roles and responsibilities of those on the board. And why exactly would you do that, is what I've said there. So I suppose first of all, clarity. So if you give an individual sort of clear objectives and how they will fit into the overall strategic goals of the organization, in my view, somebody with that clear direction can be sort of more proactive and more focused in achieving those goals and fulfilling their particular role. Secondly, then again, as I've touched upon previously, is just accountability, and it's just that notion that someone who is tasked with a specific role or a specific thing to follow up will feel more sort of morally obligated to actually fulfill that and be able to show and demonstrate to the board that they have fulfilled their end of the bargain and that they are doing their best to promote the success of the company. And finally then, it's just to make sure each individual is sort of maximised in terms of their strengths on the board. So if a particular person is a stronger communicator, it's maybe defining a role that suits and ties into that, rather than somebody who is potentially not just as good on the communication front. So again, it's just making sure everybody can sort of maximise their strengths, which I suppose ultimately will lead to a board which is better equipped for success. So again, just continuing on that theme, I've sort of just elaborated on a few of the various positions within the board that you might see, and sort of explaining how they might contribute in different ways and what responsibilities and roles might you give to them. So the first position then is just the chairperson. And the chairperson is very much nearly a focal point for the board, and they almost set the tone for the rest of the board. And in terms of responsibilities you might give to them, it's just maybe organising and coordinating the board agenda, controlling discussions and decision making during board meetings, and then potentially also the chairperson could set a mission statement for the board which establishes the core culture and values that the board and organisation should generally uphold. So the second sort of example position is just the executive directors. So the executive directors, as you'll know, are those who are in the trenches in the day-to-day, and they'll be engaged in sort of operation of the company and will deal with staff and all of that good stuff. And they are an extremely important sort of go-between between what's happening on the ground and what actually is happening at board level. And that sort of feedback role will be important so that the board can actually make decisions based on reality and what's happening on the ground, based on sort of morale and things like that on the ground, rather than maybe not taking that into account and maybe making decisions in a vacuum. So again, the executive director's feedback role is extremely important. And again, then the non-executive directors I've touched upon previously, and they can also provide a very sort of vital and effective role for the success of a board. As highlighted in the slide, non-executive directors are very well placed to provide strategic direction by virtue of their potentially wider view of external factors affecting the organisation. They can potentially monitor performance and evaluate performance in a more independent way. And then they can also help connect the business to other boards and networks which would be useful for promoting the success of that company. And essentially a non-executive director, as I say, is a more independent role that can sort of maybe more constructively challenge the directors on the board, which again can only be beneficial. So my final point today then was just to seek out and maintain and develop your director's skill base. So again, tying back into sort of evaluation and self-progress, this sort of would ensure that your director will always be improving their skill base and their know-how, and even through things like today, just that they're sort of better informed, and a better informed director can of course then contribute more effectively to a board, which will in turn only promote the success of your organisation. So I think that's all from me, Hilary, unless anybody wants to raise any questions at this point or at the end, I don't mind. That's
a quick question, Richard, if I may. Ken Simpson here. Just a question on minutes, which I agree with you are incredibly important. Is there anything in terms of best practice as to when they should be issued after a board meeting? You know, how long would you recommend?
Well, there's no legal requirement, Ken, I suppose, as a starting point, but obviously the fresher it is in your mind, the much better it is and the much more accurate a board minute is going to be. We would sort of generally recommend that minutes are taken during the meeting, and then probably 7 to 10 days, try and get them tidied up, issued to the rest of the board members for final approval, and then you'll issue them as the formal record of the minute or of the meeting. If you're doing something maybe more sort of complex, like maybe issuing shares in a company, or I'm not sure if it's relevant to you, or bringing a director onto the board, it doesn't even do any harm just to take a bit of external advice, just to make sure you're following the company constitution to the letter, and you're putting in place the proper approvals. And of course, then your company's house filings are updated as well. So as I say, I think closer to the fact, the better, and the closer to the meeting, the better, in terms of getting your board minutes finalised.
Great.
Thanks very much, Richard. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, folks, I'm just conscious of time. So if maybe just keep any questions to the end if we can. I'm so sorry, but I know that was really relevant, Ken. So and I think it was really helpful. Thank you so much, Richard. Are you happy to stop sharing your screen then, and we can hand over to our next speaker? And this is Laura Horgan, who actually has the best title ever, and especially it's very apt given the current climate. But she's Senior Vice President for First Source. And I'd just like to hand over to Laura then, please.
Right, so you can give me a nod, Hilary, just to make sure my screen's up there.
Yeah, got your screen, thank you.
Great. So yeah, thank you very much, Hilary, for that introduction, which I'm going ahead. So just by way of intro, I head up the HR function for First Source Solutions, and they are a BPO organization, a business process organization. So in layman's terms, we have 6 call centres spread across the UK, and 4,500 employees. So I have, I suppose, the full gambit of experience in managing all those aspects to it. But really, I suppose today's presentation, what I wanted to focus on, Richard's given you, I think a fantastic context in terms of, setting up a board, the considerations, and obviously the legal ramifications. I really wanted to talk from, more a personal standpoint as to why did I become a board. And previously, through Business and Community and their Business on Board, which is obviously the older version of today's program, is sort of where I got the interest for it. I suppose to focus on why and on why would I want to. One of the key aspects from my perspective really was that I we have been doing an awful lot of work within our organisation on mental health, and in conjunction with that, I have been working with Business and Community on a range of number of programs, and one of these things came up, and it sort of really made me think, with the experience that I've got, could I be of benefit, to a board? So I actually went through, I'd done the training with Arthur Cox at the time, just really to get an understanding of what does this mean for me, and what will be involved. And then with that, it was about, right, so which board do I go on? And I think that's really important. So for those that are on the call today, that are looking to join a board, or for those that are looking for members of the board, to me, one of the biggest things was having a passion, and Richard touched upon this, and I think having a passion for that organisation that you are joining. So the board that I sit on is the Quorum Centre. It's a small voluntary organisation that's based in Strabane, which is where I'm based, and it supports individuals with mental, emotional wellbeing issues. And you can see there on the slide the range of things that they offer. But the reason that then I selected and approached that board through Business and Community was because I had that passion, and that came from where we would seen, just not in terms of a work context, but the rise and challenges within mental health, the rise in issues that we're seeing, obviously having young children myself, I felt that this is an area that I'm quite passionate about. So equally, why would I not potentially then look to support this board? So I felt I had then skills and knowledge that supported the centre's needs, with the HR background. Now, at that point in time when I did join the board, there was another HR advisor on the board, which was great. So we were able to bounce off each other, but now I am that sole person that supports and helps on the HR aspects to it. It's really providing a broader experience for me. So whilst my day job is a busy day job, don't get me wrong, it is very busy, but it's really helped broaden my experience, looking at something differently. And again, one of the ethos that we have within our organisation and our CSR framework is very much to support communities that we operate in, that we live in. So to me, being able to support one from my local hometown, was one that really helped me. But equally, then it gave me a broader experience in terms of, you know, where the board needs to go, where the organisation needs to go. Richard touched on this as well. You know, you learn from others. There is a wide range of people that sit on the board, from you know, ex-school principals, people that have worked for the public service, you know, people that have worked in the voluntary service. So learning from those and taking even that wide range, you know, you will benefit yourself, you know, and build up your own skills and experience. And one of the points Richard did touch upon was, you know, evaluating the board. And I think the element of self-evaluation as well, when you're on a board, you have to make sure that, you know, you are contributing and your contribution is valued. It's not just, you know, words on a page, or you're turning up for a board meeting, you know, you're there to meet the quorum. You have to care. I think that is one of the biggest things that, you know, the messages that I want to leave, because it can be time consuming. It can be after work, you know, and you know, for any of those that are, you know, managing and juggling sort of full time, you know, kids at home, and, you know, throw a pandemic into the mix of it, and all things that have come with that. But you have to really care, because, you know, the expectations that I've highlighted out here is you have to give your time to it, and you have to give your energy to it. These organizations and the organization such as the Quorum Centre, you know, really relies on their board, and really relies on us to be at the meetings, but to contribute to those meetings and to help shape that strategy as to where the organization is going, and equally then be able to look at it and take it in a different direction as well. And that takes time, and it takes energy, and to have that passion for the board that you're joining, or as boards, if you're looking for people, you know, trying to match that skill set for people that do care about your cause will be a big takeaway, I would say. For people that are looking to join the board, I would really say only commit if you can. And the reason why, you know, it's easy to, and I'm not saying this as a broad sweeping statement, but, you know, quite often organizations, you know, even like our organization, it's good for us to have this, you know, to say that we've got so many senior leaders that sit on these boards. You know, we can, you know, demonstrate that, we can showcase that to clients. But if it's just words on a page, then it doesn't really have any meaning. So when we're promoting this internally within our organization, you know, we ask people to do it because they can, and they've got the time to do it. I suppose one of the other things is to expect the unexpected. And I know that's probably, well, you know, that not just an assumption, but what I have really learned is that I didn't really know what I was going into joining the Quorum Centre, joining the board. You know, so it's given me a huge experience and opening into the world of resilience and mental health and all the aspects that fall with that. But equally, we went from a very, you know, strong board of about 10 down to about 4, because people were retiring, people were leaving, and it was like all of a sudden, you know, having all these people to having nothing. So then it just made me think, right, okay, what can I do in order to help? What can I do to build up this board again? Things that have thrown in, you know, such as maybe complaints. You know, obviously, again, you know, the Charities Commission, you know, there's a lot of aspects around that. Richard's obviously touched upon the legal aspect, but, you know, you have to expect the unexpected. You have to be sort of thrown in, you know, essentially maybe at the deep end on some occasions. But if you've got the passion and you've got the commitment to it, then in my mind, it will absolutely be a success. So that's it from me. So with that, I will hand over to Ian.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Yeah, well, my name's Ian Henry. I'm director within Henry Group, a family-owned business based in Magherafelt. We employ just over 200 people, mainly within the construction sector, and have offices in Magherafelt, Belfast, Scotland, and Midlands.
Ian, sorry to interrupt you, but your camera's off, which I'm not too sure whether you wanted it to be off or not, but
okay.
But we can see the slide as well, so it's entirely up to you.
It's not coming on there for some reason.
That's okay. That's fine. That's okay.
Run the slide. That's okay. Over this last 20 years or so, I've served on several boards, mostly within the construction sector, on areas related to likes of housing committees and the demolition sector, and currently sit on the Woods Primary School Board of Governors, Magherafelt Chamber of Commerce Board, and the Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce. which I'm currently the president of since March this year. And I would say that's probably one of the most challenging boards I've ever sat on, even taking our own company into light of that as well, as it's representing over 1,000 members. And I would be responsible for chairing the monthly board meetings and the quarterly chamber council meetings as well, which could be up and over 100 members attending that. And I suppose that has made me aware of the time allowance for boards and for board meetings, and it's something that people need to be aware of when joining a board. And Laura's touched on it there too, that we need to be committed. We need to be willing to give up our time, and that could be out of hours as well as business hours. And so our own businesses, I suppose, have to be flexible with that. If we are joining a board, that there might be meetings during our own business hour time, and we have to attend those. So, you know, flexibility from all sides is required. Some people join boards for all sorts of different reasons. They might have a business connection, it might be a community sector that appeals to them, and it might just be to gain experience or knowledge from others that sit on that particular board or the business. So we all have different reasons for that, but I have joined some boards in particular to give something back to the community, and I think that's important as well. Even within the chamber role, I'm able to get involved in different things and give back to the community. But with the school board of governors that I sit on, I'm able to do that also, and it's a good way to interact with everyone around the table, because you're involved with teachers, you're involved with student representatives, you're involved with the heads of the school and other boards of governors from different sectors. And I suppose we can all learn from that. You can learn as much from a school kid, which I have learned myself, that you can from a top business person. I suppose it's been willing to take that on board, and I suppose humbling yourself to listen to somebody else's advice and take it on and use it to your own advantage. And then you can bring that to other boards that you sit on as well and use that skill base to move forward. It's also a great way to learn, expand your knowledge outside your own working environment. You sit on a board alongside different representatives from different sectors, different backgrounds, different age profiles. I have learned a lot over the years just sitting on boards and listening to how people come about making a decision, hard decisions at times, and the calmness probably, I suppose, in a boardroom in doing that, and that's a different quality completely from some of us are used to in our busy lives and busy workflow. So again, it's harnessing that and using it and taking it forward to the next level, if you like, whether that be in your own business, the board you sit on currently, or the board that you're maybe looking for in the future. What is expected from a board member? From myself, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with sitting on a board. Besides the legal obligations that have been mentioned, you also have responsibility of making tough decisions. And I think that's something you need to walk in with your eyes open, that you're going to be in that role. You have a legal responsibility, but you also have to be willing to make serious, have serious discussions and make serious decisions around the table. And they might not always be in favour of everybody around the table. So there's going to be hard discussions. There's going to be hard decisions to be made. But at the same time, we have to come to a conclusion in some way. So we have to be respectful and come to that conclusion together within the boardroom and bring that to forward so that the company or the organisation can then move forward with that. We also need to be dynamic, bring creative thinking to the table, collaborate with all our members of the board. Even if we have a difference of opinion, we still need to come, as I say, to a conclusion one way or another. And that's very important, that everybody understands when they're in that room, whatever decisions are made, so stay in that room and there's not a fallout afterwards when you leave the room. And I think from a family background, that that's maybe one of our strengths, that we understand that more than anything, because as a family group and as a board of directors, if we fall out in the boardroom and bring it back outside, well then it's affecting the family as well. So we've learned over the years how to address that and how to manage that, and deal with it in the boardroom, and it's always run smoothly, thankfully, on that basis. So that's something that I have learned from that sector and brought into boardrooms myself. Board member is also there to advise and to challenge as well, and that's maybe one thing to bear in mind if you're looking at bringing in a board member, that they might challenge decisions that you have put in place for a long time as to why you want to do it, because they're coming in from a different background and looking at it in a different way. They might still agree with you at the end of it, but I believe that it's good for a board member to challenge things and be upfront with that. And not just challenge to be awkward, but challenge to bring creative thinking again back into it, and make sure that everybody is focused on where they really want to be, and it's not just a one-off decision that might change the course of things. That in turn, can raise tough discussions again, but as I said before, we just have to be straightforward, but be respectful of everybody around the table. It's good to have a diverse board, as you can get great knowledge around the table, and that's good for the organisation, that they can pick and choose maybe who they want to have a discussion with within that board. As I say, you could be coming from all different sectors. It could be people from a banking organisation in there. There could be people from construction. There could be people from HR. So there's different aspects that you can always look at in the board. So it's good to be diverse and make sure that that's all brought forward and used to its best advantage as a board itself, that we're bringing everybody to the table and making sure that they do want to be there. They want to be participants of every discussion. They want to be involved. They want the knowledge of that organisation that they're representing. And they have to remember, as a board member, that you are representing an organisation. So you have to make sure you don't affect their business. You don't affect their movement, whether that be a charity or whatever, and actions that you may do outside of that boardroom. So you need to be very aware of their reputation and not have any adverse effect on that, and anything or any action that you might do within your own business or outside business life as well. I think it's also very easy for us to sit around the table and maybe get very comfortable. I would be in favour of rotation on boards. I know that that's maybe some people look at it that they'd rather have long-term board members, but I believe that rotation is a good thing because it does bring fresh people to the board. But you can also keep members in there for 2-3 years, whatever, so that you're not losing full momentum, but you are keeping it fresh and keeping it lively and moving. And that's one thing that I always look at when looking at a board. And lastly, our hearts and minds need to be in it. We need to be committed. For the board, we need to be willing to learn about the business or the charitable or school or whatever that may be that we are representing. We need to make sure we are knowledgeable of them and what effect any decision might have, short or long term, regarding that board. So that's really all I have on it. It's really coming from myself as a family member on a board and what boards I sit on. And just to give you, I suppose, a bit of a feel for what it's like to be a board member and what I believe I need to give, because it is a give and take. So what I need to give and what I actually expect back from that as well. So thank you for your time this morning, for listening to me.
Thank you, Ian. That's brilliant. And actually, I didn't realise that your title on the Chamber of Commerce is President. So again, very apt for the week that's in it. But thank you so much for sharing your experience, and I wouldn't envy that task of sitting on or being a president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'd say you'd have to have some negotiation skills there. And finally, I'm going to hand over to Alwyn Liner, who is the Chief Executive of NIACRO and also then a board member on NICFA. So Alwyn, over to you.
Okay, well, thanks very much, everybody. Many of the things that I think I'd like to touch on have been covered, so I'm going to amplify, I think, some of the things that I think are really important, talking about it as a perspective of somebody who has been on a range of boards over my time in work. Also, a little bit about my own board and expectations of it, and then why I encourage staff to be members of boards. So I suppose, just as a member myself, a little bit about me. I mean, I've worked in the third sector for over 40 years now, and probably for all but the first 3 or 4 years of that time, I've been involved in a board of some other organisation. And I've worked for NIACRO for all of those 40 years, you need to know. So it's been really important for me to have that engagement with other organisations in order to build my own experience and to understand, I suppose, processes in other organisations, and to have the opportunity to contribute, which has been important for me. I think 2 things I'd be particularly I'd note of caution around being involved in other boards. The first thing is, don't necessarily be flattered by the approach or because you get through in a competition. Sometimes you will feel uncomfortable in the place that you land. Maybe it doesn't fit completely with your own values and processes and actually what you want to commit to. So in 2 situations where I've thought I wanted to do something, I've been around for about 6 months and found it wasn't the right place for me and had those conversations about disengaging. So I think it's been many times it works, but I think it's also right to understand if you haven't hit the place where you wanted to be, there are many other opportunities. So don't feel that that means that you don't ever want to be a board member somewhere else. And I suppose the other bit that I would say that I discovered all too soon in my first board membership was that you can get yourself involved in processes that are really quite challenging. You know, the issue of conflict that others have reflected. So you may be involved in smaller organisations in the final process of a statutory dismissal, things that you mightn't be involved with in your own organisation, or significant complaints or issues around, you know, police investigations. All these things will happen because that's just life. So I mean, it can be a baptism of fire, but on the other hand, it's all around the experience and the independence and values that you bring to those processes. So, you know, I don't regret any of them, even the ones that I found challenging and unsuitable for me. I think it's been a learning experience. In terms of my own board, we have a board of the organisation that meets on a regular basis. We have an amount of time that people can serve on the board, initially 3 years, and then that can be renewed for a second term. And it is useful to have refresh. It's also useful to have a degree of continuity, because boards don't meet weekly. In our situation, they move about every 6 or 7 weeks. So in order to have a degree of continuity, I think it's important that people make a commitment for a period of time. And we do have a membership, or we're a membership organisation, so people commit to, I suppose, to our mission and vision and values, and that would be something as people come forward that we're really testing out. Not that they are saying the same thing as us. Quite often we'll have, as Richard said, challenge on prior decisions. You know, why did you ever come to that decision? And actually being required to revisit the decision may make you soften, strengthen, change your view. But it can also be helpful actually to remember why you came to that decision, and is it still logical and is it still timely? We have a welcome pack for people, and that process of induction is very important. I find that if people, and sometimes it does happen in the way that people might join or be brought forward onto the executive, that they haven't completed that induction process before they get to their first meeting. And really I find that it's so much more helpful if they have, and we've taken the time. And sometimes it'll happen if people aren't available to do it, or there are other commitments, or it gets cancelled. But I think that's really important. But 2 things I think are around board membership that are always important to remember. The requirements for boards can change, and I'll give you an example. The Charity Commission wrote to board members across the board several years ago following the Oxfam scandal, in order to advise them to, you know, strengthen and revisit safeguarding as the issue and to take on board safeguarding training. And, you know, I'm not saying it was a struggle, but it has taken time for all of those board members in the NIACRO context to complete on that training. Everybody now has done that, but there are new requirements. So you join up thinking it's one thing, and as events roll out, then new requirements may fall to you, and they may be a bit of a challenge. So, I mean, I did understand why several of the board members say, you know, I did training about that some 20 years ago, and we're saying, well, yeah, not actually quite timely for today, and, you know, please take the time to do this training. And the piece around evaluation, well, I'm not necessarily sold on the idea that it is akin to an appraisal, because I think the roles of volunteer board members, and there are absolutely volunteers in our context, they get nothing other than their travel expenses. But we do have a formal 24-hour process every 18 months where the board takes time out to evaluate its performance, and in that the contribution that individuals have made. And it actually feeds into a team building approach for the organization and for the executive members to feel much more a part of the process. If you have, as we do, 2-hour meetings every, you know, 6 to 8 weeks, you know, you come and you go. Certainly it's a bit Zoom-like at the moment, but it is, you know, speedy to get through the business. But where you can take that other bit of time and actually have some sideways conversations, it has certainly strengthened the team dynamic of our board. The final point, I suppose, is around what I see as the value of staff being on boards. So, and I'll just give you an example. So in the last couple of years, we ran a competition internally for a managerial post, and an excellent candidate didn't make it because, quite frankly, they didn't have the depth of management experience that would have been required for the post. We had a debrief about it and you know, wondered how might that management capacity be built. And you know, as opportunities emerged, that individual became the board member of another organisation and has now been through the process of helping that organisation to merge with another one. Fantastic managerial experience, which he's now bringing back into the organisation, and we're ready for another promotional opportunity. And I certainly see that the skills have developed. Whether the company wins the competition is a different matter because it'll be a new field, but certainly the fact of being in another organisation and having the opportunities outside of the role in this organisation has certainly been an opportunity for him to build his skills. So I don't think everything is about the self and how you build your own skills, but people have to get something out of it to enjoy it. And I think it's an important consideration for senior managers to think as they're growing staff, would an opportunity of being involved in managerial structure in another organisation be something that would build my team too. So those are some general thoughts. Thank you.
Alwyn, thank you so much. That's fantastic. Oh, Sandra, there's Sandra. I thought I was having to go on my own there, Sandra. It's great, the technology, the texts that go backwards and forwards. I have to take a phone call. I'll be back in 5 minutes. So I'm going to hand over to Sandra now, Sandra Bailey from NICFA, who is going to wrap up the webinar this morning. Sandra, good to see you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much to our speakers this morning. Thank you to Richard and also to Laura and to Ian and to Alwyn. Lots and lots of food for thought and lots of information to take in, everybody. So thankfully this is recorded and we can all watch this at a later point and maybe even circulate it to our other board members and people in our organisation as well. So thank you for the time that each of the speakers took to prepare that as well. So just really a few action points, things for us all to get our teeth into now that we've been motivated and stimulated to either be on a board or to recruit new board members. First and foremost, we have our Skills Match website. I would really encourage you all, if you haven't already registered on Skills Match, go on and get your organisation on and go on and get yourself on as well. Excuse me. You know, to be a volunteer or be a board member for perhaps another organisation. So please go on. It's a very simple process. If there's any problem, just contact Hilary and myself, and we will help you get on, or we'll put you on ourselves, or whatever it takes to get you on there, we'll get you on. So if you need a board member at the minute, please go on to that website, and if you'd like to be one as well. The other thing I just want to let you know, as Hilary said, this is Trustees Week. We've been in NICFA doing events every day. So this is, I think, our first year we've actually had an event on every single day of Trustees Week. So we're delighted with that, and the attendance has been fantastic. So one more chance, today was part of that too, one more chance tomorrow, which is the Trustee Annual Reporting at 2 p.m. There are still places on that, so get yourself booked onto that as well. The other thing that I was putting in the chat earlier, and Hilary as well was putting in, was the DIY Committee Guide. Guys, the DIY Committee Guide is a fabulous resource. It's sort of maintained by ourselves in NICFA, but there's a good governance group of people who meet on a regular basis to update that, and there's so many good resources. I'm signposting people to it all of the time. Templates, tools, a checklist for your governance, everything's on there, so go on and have a look at that as well. And Richard gave us some really good information and advice about governance. Our governance team in NICFA is also available to advise you and to help you in that, and has lots of resources on our website. I also wanted to let you know, just, and I'm sure a lot of you know about this already, is Boardroom Apprentice. So Eileen Mullen, I know a lot of you will know Eileen, runs Strictly Boardroom, and every year she has a programme running which helps you if you'd like to be a board member, just to get the skills and the confidence to do that. Go on and look at our website. There's some great wee case studies on there and really good information about that.